What if the Bible's strongest man wasn't human at all? What if Samson's legendary strength wasn't a divine gift, but the last spark of a forbidden bloodline? A bloodline the gods themselves tried to destroy. Hidden beneath centuries of scripture and myth lies a truth so explosive it rewrites history. Samson was no hero of faith. He was the final experiment of the Anunnaki, the last of the Nephilim, a living weapon in a war older than time. And his downfall? It wasn't betrayal. It was destiny. The gods had planned it all along. But the question remains, was Samson their greatest triumph or their deadliest mistake? Long before kings ruled the earth, before temples rose in honor of the gods, there was a time when the Anunnaki walked among men. They shaped humanity, gifting knowledge, power, and civilization. But their greatest experiment was their hybrid offspring, the Nephilim. These beings, part god and part human, were giants among men, warriors whose strength rivaled the heavens. But the Nephilim grew arrogant, defying their creators, seeking dominion over all. And so, the gods unleashed the Great Flood, a cataclysm meant to erase their mistake. But not all were destroyed. A secret bloodline survived, hidden within humanity, a whisper of the old world, carrying the dormant power of the gods. The Anunnaki debated among themselves. Should they destroy what remained, or should they let fate decide? Then, in the land of Zorah, a barren woman was visited by a divine messenger. "You will bear a son," the being declared, its form glowing with ethereal light. "He shall be set apart, untouched by wine or steel, for he is chosen." That night, Samson was conceived, the last child of the forgotten gods. The Anunnaki did not interfere. They only observed. Would he restore their lost legacy, or become their greatest failure? The final experiment had begun. The night Samson was conceived, the stars burned brighter than ever before. Some saw it as an omen, others as a blessing. But those who knew the ancient ways, those who still whispered the name of the old gods, understood the truth. This was no ordinary child. Samson's mother, once barren, carried within her the last remnant of a forgotten race. A child born not just of man, but of something far greater. And from the moment he took his first breath, the world around him changed. From infancy, Samson's strength was beyond comprehension. As a toddler, he could grip his mother's arm with such force that she winced in pain. By the time he was 5, he lifted stones that would take 5 men to move. By 10, he could outrun the fastest horses, his feet barely touching the ground. The whispers began early. "He is not one of us." Some said he was cursed, others that he was touched by the gods themselves. But no one could deny the power that radiated from within him. Then came the lion. One evening, as Samson walked alone through the vineyards of Timnah, he heard a deep, guttural growl. A lion, larger than any seen before, stood before him. Its golden eyes glowed in the fading sunlight. Its muscles tensed, ready to kill. Most men would have run. Samson did not. The beast lunged, claws outstretched. But before it could strike, Samson's hands shot out like lightning. He caught the lion midair. The beast roared in rage, but Samson did not falter. With one surge of power, he ripped the lion's jaws apart. The carcass fell at his feet, twitching in the dust. The next morning, when the villagers found the lifeless body of the beast, they fell to their knees in fear. No man could do this. But Samson was not just a man. And in the unseen realms, the Anunnaki watched. As Samson grew, so did the legends surrounding him. He fought wolves with his bare hands. He bent iron as if it were twine. His enemies fell before him like dust before a storm. The Philistines, the ruling power of the land, began to take notice. Samson was no longer a rumor. He was a threat. To them, Samson was not a man, but a weapon, a force that could not be controlled. And so, they made a plan. If he could not be broken by strength, then they would break him another way. They would not send warriors. They would send a woman. Her name would be Delilah. The Philistines ruled with an iron grip, their armies unmatched, their warriors trained from birth. They had crushed every uprising, every rebellion. To them, the Israelites were nothing more than a defeated people, unworthy of even resistance. But then came Samson. a man whose strength defied logic, whose mere presence sent warriors into retreat, a man who could not be killed. He did not raise an army. He fought alone, and he was unstoppable. The Philistines could no longer ignore the stories. A lone Israelite was slaughtering their warriors, walking through their cities untouched, defying their rule with nothing but his bare hands. They sent 1,000 men to capture him, 1,000 trained soldiers. They found him at the cliffs of Lehi, a rugged land of stone and dust. Samson stood alone, his back to the precipice. His hands were bound with thick ropes. The Israelites themselves had betrayed him, handing him over to avoid the Philistine king's wrath. A Philistine captain stepped forward, sneering, "Where is your strength now, savage?" The soldiers laughed, but Samson smiled. His muscles flexed, and the ropes binding his arms snapped like dried grass. The laughter died instantly. Then, before the first soldier could react, Samson moved. He lunged forward, grabbing the nearest thing at his feet, a donkey's jawbone. And then the slaughter began. The first warrior's skull shattered with a single strike. Another lunged with a spear. Samson sidestepped, twisted, and drove the jawbone through his chest. He moved like a storm, faster than any human should be. Blades clashed against his skin but did not break him. By the time the dust settled, 1,000 warriors lay dead. The survivors fled in terror, screaming his name. Samson is not a man. He is a demon, a god. But Samson did not listen. His blood pounded in his ears. His breath came heavy. And for the first time, he felt it, a hunger. Not for food, not for drink, for war. Samson had become unstoppable. He walked into Philistine cities alone, tearing down gates, challenging warriors in their own courts. He took what he wanted, fearing nothing and no one. He no longer fought for his people. He fought for himself. The Anunnaki, watching from the unseen realms, grew silent. "He has become too powerful," one murmured. "Power without control is destruction," another warned. And so, they let fate intervene. The Philistines did not need to kill Samson. They only needed to make him weak. And they would not send swords, or arrows, or spears. They would send a woman. Her name was Delilah, and she would be the blade no warrior could wield. The Philistines gathered in their great halls, their rulers deep in thought. "We have sent warriors," one of them growled. 1,000 lie dead at his feet. "We have sent assassins," another muttered. They never returned. An elder, wiser than the rest, leaned forward. His voice was calm, but sharp as a blade. "Then we will not send steel. We will send silk." And so, they summoned Delilah. She was no common woman. She was a weapon, trained in seduction, manipulation, and deception. She had broken kings without ever raising a blade. And now, she would bring down Samson, the last bloodline of the gods. Delilah did not beg for Samson's attention. She made him chase her. Where other women worshipped him, she remained distant. Where others sought his favor, she made him crave hers. And Samson, for all his divine strength, fell into her web. She whispered in his ear at night. She traced the scars on his arms with her fingers. She made him believe she was the only one who could understand him. And then, when his guard was down, she asked the question the Philistines had been waiting for. "Tell me, Samson, what is the source of your strength?" Samson laughed. A warrior does not give away his secrets so easily. So she waited. She did not push. She did not demand. She simply loved him. And Samson, blinded by desire, never saw the real battle happening inside his own mind. Days turned into weeks. The Philistines grew impatient, but Delilah remained patient. She did not need to rush. Samson was already losing himself. Then, one night, in the quiet of their chambers, as Samson lay in her arms, he whispered the words that would seal his fate. "It is my hair," he murmured, his voice thick with sleep. "It is the mark of the gods." Delilah's lips curled into a smile. She had won. The betrayal of a titan. That night, as Samson slept in the arms of the woman he loved, Delilah took a blade and cut away his destiny. The strands of his divine strength fell to the floor like lifeless threads of fate. The air around them grew thick and heavy. The unseen gods turned their gaze away. For the first time in his life, Samson felt weak. The door burst open. Philistine warriors stormed inside, their blades drawn. Samson leapt to his feet, but his power was gone. Blades that once shattered against his skin now tore through flesh. He fought, but he was just a man now. They bound him in chains. They beat him until blood filled his mouth. And then they gouged out his eyes. The last bloodline of the gods had fallen. The Anunnaki did not intervene. Their experiment was over. The Philistines dragged Samson through the streets of Gaza, bound in iron chains, his once mighty form broken. The people gathered, jeering, spitting, hurling stones. He had once been their terror. Now he was their trophy. But they did not kill him. That would have been too merciful. Instead, they chose humiliation. They paraded him like a conquered beast, the man who had once torn lions apart, slaughtered armies, ripped city gates from their hinges. Now, he stumbled blindly, led only by the hands of his captors. The last Nephilim had fallen. The Philistine rulers gathered in their greatest temple, the Temple of Dagon, a towering structure of stone and gold, its pillars thick as ancient trees, its halls vast enough to hold thousands. It was there they would make their greatest mockery. Samson, the so-called god of war, would be brought before their people. He would kneel. He would bow. He would be broken before them all. The temple filled with nobles, priests, warriors, and rulers. Thousands of Philistines, all waiting to witness the destruction of the man who had once destroyed them. And in the center of it all, Samson was brought forth. The Philistine king stood before him, goblet raised. "Where is your strength now, Samson?" he mocked. "Where is the God who made you?" Laughter filled the temple. A servant led Samson forward, placing his hands against the two great central pillars of the temple. He could feel the weight of it. The pillars held the entire structure, massive and unshakable. But Samson had once been stronger than stone. He had once stood against the armies of men and won. And so, as the crowd laughed and cursed his name, he whispered a prayer. But this was no prayer to Yahweh. Samson did not call upon the God of Israel. He called upon the forgotten gods who made him. He whispered their names, names lost to time, names that had been erased from history. "You made me. You gave me strength. If I am truly yours, let me prove it now." For the first time in years, the gods answered. The air grew thick. The ground trembled beneath his feet. A burning energy surged through his veins, greater than anything he had ever felt before. And in that moment, Samson knew. This had been their plan all along. The Philistines laughed, until the temple shook. The torches flickered. The pillars groaned. The laughter turned to silence. Samson, blind and broken, placed his hands against the stone columns. He took a breath and pushed. The sound was like thunder. The pillars cracked. The ceiling split apart. Screams filled the air as the Temple of Dagon began to collapse. The ground shook, ripping through the city like an earthquake. Samson, in his final moment, roared like the Nephilim of old. The temple came crashing down, burying thousands beneath stone and fire. And in that instant, Samson was no longer a man. He was legend. The Temple of Dagon lay in ruins, the once mighty structure reduced to nothing but rubble and dust. 1,000 Philistine lords lay dead, their screams swallowed by the collapsing stone. Among them, buried beneath the wreckage, was Samson, the last of his kind. But in the silence that followed, something felt incomplete. Far beyond the reach of mortals, beyond the veil of time and space, the Anunnaki still watched. Had Samson failed them? Or had he fulfilled his true purpose? The Philistines, their empire broken, had spent years trying to extinguish the last remnants of divine blood from the earth. Yet in their arrogance, they had sealed their own fate. Perhaps this was what the gods intended all along. A final sacrifice, a cleansing of the old order. For though Samson had perished, his bloodline was not truly erased. There were whispers, murmurs of descendants, carrying the dormant essence of the gods. Bloodlines that would scatter across generations, waiting for the right moment. For the cycle was never meant to end. It was meant to begin again. The Anunnaki had seen civilizations rise and fall. They had seen warriors, kings, and prophets play their roles in the great cosmic game. And as long as humanity walked the earth, the gods would continue to watch. They had not abandoned mankind. They had merely been waiting. But the real question is, what are they waiting for? Was Samson truly a hero, or just another pawn in a cosmic war between the gods? Did the Anunnaki create him to save his people, or was he merely a weapon, unleashed and discarded once his purpose was fulfilled? And if Samson's bloodline was never truly erased, could there still be remnants of the Nephilim among us today? The truth is buried beneath myth, scripture, and time, but one thing remains certain. The gods never left. They are still watching. But the question is, what are they waiting for? Comment below. Do you think Samson was part of an ancient Anunnaki experiment, or was his downfall truly just the work of man? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more hidden truths from ancient history.